Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the MCU Aftershow. And I'm your host, Carlo. And we have Dion below me. Oh, I like this. Yeah, I could do this on the comic book panel. He's below me. And then we have the variant, Paris, also with us. What's going on, everybody?
Hey, what's up, man?
How do we not know you're not a variant?
Well, that's a good question. Did my beard get shorter? Is there any changes to it? Is it curling?
A little bit grayer. A little bit grayer.
Is it? I might be a variant. Yeah, it could be. But today we are going to be talking about Loki, which was a very hot show on Disney Plus. In fact, it was very well done. The acting was phenomenal. So I am excited to get to talking about this show. I think this thing could have been a movie. It was so good. So, in the season of Loki, we're going to cover the whole thing. There were 6 episodes in total. And it just feels like it went by so fast. I want it to come back already and see more Loki. Poor guy. You learned to love Loki through this thing. But let's talk about a little bit about relationships in this series, right? Okay, so in the series, they introduced Loki, obviously, and they introduced Morbius, and they kind of like they had a very interesting relationship. It was like at first it was like a distrusting kind of relationship. Like, what are you trying to get out of me? You know, can I trust you? And Morbius looks at Loki like, you're just a bad jokester. You're just a bad, terrible, god of Asgard that fools everybody, but you ain't gonna fool me, and they start off their relationship that kind of way. And it gets intriguing because there's a lot of back and forth talk, and there's a lot of conversation and dialogue about what's his plan, how did he divert the timeline, what is going on with this guy, and then you kind of find out that there's so many Lokis out there for Morbius. He just tells Loki straight out, all you guys are basically the same kind of bad jokesters, And then it gets a little bit more interesting later on in the series as we talk about relationships. We have Loki, and then we have Sylvie, who is a female Loki. And in some sense, again, at first, Loki is trying to track this variant down that Sylvie doesn't even know it's female Loki. And when they come in contact, he is so intrigued by her intelligence and by her abilities and how she manipulated and escaped the TVA that he decides, I'm just going to go ahead and side with my female self because I kind of love her in some unique way. Which I thought was kind of a twist, that Loki loves himself. And man, that's just mind-blowing.
He literally said he's narcissistic. Just think about that.
Well, that is true as well. And then you have Ravonna and Morbius, and Ravonna is like the judge of the TVA, the kind of council, and they don't really tell you how she got there in the first episode. But what you do see is that at first, Morbius is very loyal to Ravonna and the TVA, and you figure like, okay, well, Morbius is not going to break the rules of the TVA no matter what throughout the series. Like, you feel like it's something he just believes in. Mm-hmm. And the TVA is set up really cool. It is a place that exists within time, but is on scene. And where all these people come from, You have no idea, but it's just so interesting because it's retro, but yet it's sophisticated with technology. And I mean, you have to go to your court sentence, your hearing, because you're a variant. Even if you don't know you're a variant, they just come and pick you up and kidnap you from your time and be like, "You're a variant. Reset time." And there's no reasoning for it. Like in the first episode, you don't have any idea why they do all this kind of stuff. The TVA is set up almost like a real world employment office. They have like mail and files, and they have desk clerks, and they have snack machines.
It almost feels like Men in Black or something, right? It's just got all this weird stuff going on, and it feels retro, right? It doesn't feel futuristic. It feels retro, but it's futuristic technology at the same time. It's like kind of crazy.
Yeah, and like as you see in these pictures, thanks to Marvel Studios and Disney, these are exclusive pictures of theirs that they share on their press site. But you can see him, like the scanner, like when he goes in, he gets scanned, he gets a collar on his neck at the TVA. It's like a real kind of place where they investigate these variants, and a lot of times they just end up pruning the variants and killing them. But for some reason, Morbius is very interested in Loki, and that kind of sets the whole series off. It's like, okay, this Loki might be a little bit different all of a sudden to Morbius, and Morbius doesn't understand why. But we'll get we'll get a little bit into that as we all talk. But Paris, there's some relationships in here as well. I see, the Morbius and jet skis, right? What's going on with that?
Yeah. That was his passion. He, for some reason, he had a passion for jet skis, but we're not sure if that's because of the actions that took place in the TVA. But he was like, once he gets a chance, he's going to ride a jet ski. And it was quite interesting that he shared that with Loki and the rest of the other folks in the show. But yeah, and that sort of ties back to the relationship that they had with each other once they began trusting each other a little bit. They shared more and more details about each other, so that was pretty cool. And his passion with jet skis was awesome. The fans were like, "We better see him on a jet ski. He better not. They better not kill him off because we need to have him." Get that ultimate goal of him riding the jet ski. So we'll see what happens as we go through this. And as we know, season 2 had been launched, or they greenlit season 2 of Loki. So
I would just want to point out that his name is Mobius, not to be confused with Morbius from the other Matrix, but Mobius. Which is the thing about this in season 1, how it start out that I think is interesting is the only character we know is Loki. Everything else is new to us. We don't know any of these people. We don't know where they come from. We don't understand any of this. Everything's turned upside down. It does start out, however, how hopefully everyone's seen how the original Avenger movie and Endgame to see how this plays out. But it was pretty cool how, it's like a flashback, and then he zips to this area that's basically where Iron Man 1 takes place. So one other thing I think is interesting is out of all the Marvel TV shows on Disney Plus, this is the first one that does not take place after the Endgame. This is before, right? And it's kind of like, okay, well, what kind of story can they tell us that would kind of bring this together to kind of get us anticipating what's to come? So, and as we go through this journey, we're going through, like I said, seeing how the TVA exists, seeing all this weird stuff. And like I said, it seems classic, kind of like a 70s or 60s or something. I don't know. You guys tell me, but it seems like it's coming from that older style era. Right. And then, you got Mobius. Yes, Clowns. I know you touched on the relationships, and I feel like, everyone wants to believe in something. And there's always one that's dedicated to the craft, right? And he was that guy who believed in what they were doing was the right thing, right? And be honest with you, I just never seen this before. So hey, all this is new, trying to seek it in, and I don't know if I got it all, but hey, it's a lot of spinning wheels here and things going on in the background. I mean, I didn't know what a variant was until this came up. What I didn't. This is all new, but hey, it is cool to see that there is something beyond our understanding, kind of like outside of the universe, introducing multiverse. Even though we've seen multiverses before, we didn't see a police of a multiverse, right? We didn't know that was a thing. And then the Loki we are looking at is not the Loki who kind of had like lessons learned or whatever in the end game and had to change a heart and all this good stuff. No, this is the guy who just got beat up by Hulk. Spoilers if you guys didn't see, but yeah, he's not pretty happy getting slammed around a bunch of times. So seeing them snatch him from that time zone and then kind of moving forward, they take, they neutralize his powers. Another thing, like I said, they have advanced technology, but it just seems weird, like out of place. Not that you're supposed to understand it, but it's supposed to be bizarre, I guess, to kind of get us guessing and thinking. Right. When Loki, basically was attempting to do his little plays, trying to manipulate the situation so he can escape and use his powers, et cetera, et cetera. And it's funny how he kept getting caught off guard because they already know all his tricks. And then, Mobius, their relationship is kind of like a buddy cop relationship. Those kind of movies where, you got these duo and they kind of play off each other. That's what it seemed like to me. And he pretty much reveals all the stuff we know before that happened to that Loki.
Just to get back on track, I want to say, alluding to what PK said earlier, it's Mobius and not Morbius. And I said Morbius as in the vampire from Marvel. I'm getting confused a little bit. But now could he be a variant of the vampire? I don't know. But Paris, there's, I was looking into a little bit of research. And in Fantastic Four, there is a little bit of information about the TVA. But as far as Loki series goes, can you go ahead and get into a little bit of the TVA with us?
Right. Yeah. So when Loki picked up the Tesseract and vanished and landed, in the sand, shout out to the Iron Man sort of throwback there. He was arrested right away by the TVA. And it's crazy. I'm like, who are these people? Like, what are they doing? Okay, well, it looks like they're cops. They capture him and they take him in. They put him in a jumpsuit. They are actually recording every single word he had ever said on a stack of paper, and they're like, sign these please. And he's he loves to talk. So, and that's something that you notice all through all the movies, that Loki is a talker. That's like, oh yeah, he loves to talk, he won't stop talking, because
right.
This is how he is, right? And the TVA, just knowing that they exist, it's like, okay, what are they doing? So in the first episode, you're not really sure. You just know that he was arrested for a crime, and during that, he was, trying to do his magic tricks and trying to get out of that, and it was all blocked. And then he's seen the other guy get pruned, right? So he's just like, whoa. And that's when he sort of snapped to it. PK, when they were taking Loki around, they talked about the Infinity Stones. What do you think about that scene and how they sort of they were useless there?
So I think that's when I look at stuff like that, I view that as like a story element to say it's time to move on, right? Mm-hmm. Can't change the past. You can't revisit. And I think it's the way I view it as symbolism, right? So like I said, it's like that was his go-to. It was always his go-to, right? Even in the Thor, that was his go-to. However, things changed. And now It's time to move on. It's time to think of different pictures and maybe even twist it upside down. And that's how I viewed it, as kind of like a symbolism of that arc is over.
Yeah.
I know
Did
you
you
want to
think?
be a part of it, but this is over.
Yeah. Did you think that when they made the comment that, hey, these are all paperweights, I started
Right,
laughing. I was like, what? And they're like, how do they
right,
get all these other stones? So right.
right. And that's kind of what I'm saying is like they don't view them as threats. You don't see them hesitating or feeling some at they're very confident that that don't mean anything. So in my mind, they have enough knowledge or understanding of what's going on to know that whatever happened with Thanos, it didn't affect anything because it's over. And I don't know what that really means because, the first episode is kind of like, wow, like, really? This is where we at? They're nothing. We just went through like 2 movies well, 10 years of movies dealing with these stones, and now they're nothing. But again, the way I feel, and I might be wrong, I'm just speculating based on the intentional language they used is, hey, they're paperweights. They don't do anything. These people don't or do not fear a snap, right? They don't fear any of that. Why? Well, they have to have some kind of information. Information is power. So not only that, I think it, like I said, behind the scenes, so many words, it's symbolism. Time to move on. Whatever the next big thing is, which is time, apparently. Because even though this show technically takes place prior or time is fluid, kind of, right? It's weird because even though this Loki is from the past, it kind of exists in all times almost. At least that's how the time police is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when Loki picked up the Tesseracts, it was an end game. So it was during either it had to be on going on during Endgame because when Mobius showed him the videos when they were talking about his life and they did the DB Cooper thing and then they also talked about he started disagreeing, started getting an argument, and then he came back in there and started watching it, and he saw the rest of his life play out. Saw his mom die, saw his dad die. Well, he re-witnessed his mom dying. He didn't see his dad dying because he wasn't around. And then he saw Thanos kill him, right? And he saw himself turn into some sort of hero, fighting, trying to save Asgard. I think, and he also saw Asgard get destroyed, right, by his sister. So there's a lot of things that Loki had to internalize because now he's seen how the rest of his life played out, and now he knows why he's there at the TVA. So the ending of the episode 1 was pretty insane. And as we go into episode 2, PK, the Nexus events, what are those? Like how are those explained in the series?
As far as my understanding, the way it is variance is what we now know as different iterations of the characters. When they do something to step out of the timeline, such as what Loki did with the Tesseract, that creates a Nexus event. So the police figure out what he did and immediately come in to correct the problem and try to wipe that moment of history out of existence. I still think it's super complex for me to absorb because it's like, what? Because Endgame, they went to a different universe of a timeline to recover. And then this is a Loki of a different universe of a timeline. So I just think all this is a little strange. So is this Loki a different universe of a timeline, or is all the universe's timeline just some sort of connected in some sort of way? And then anytime a variant does something, like could be a Loki, just not a Loki that we know of, do something different. Or does a lot of Lokis look the same, or do they not look the same? If they all did something different, not just Loki, but anybody like you, me, could Carlo be a different person? He could be a woman variant in a different situation, right? I don't know. It's just, but if they do something outside of what the TVA know that should happen, this is why I'm thinking that they have knowledge, man, because how do they know to hit him up so quick? Like, he didn't even do anything. They was on him like white on rice, right? It was crazy. Like, as soon as he teleported, they was there. He didn't know what happened. It was over. So these Nexus events, I think they named them this, specifically to give them an excuse to try and police, or in some ways could be manipulating the timeline themselves.
Yeah. Also in season 2, this is when Loki's variant Sylvie comes to the forefront. Carlo, like, when she was introduced in that she had been messing around with the TVA for a while now, and when they first introduced her in the supermarket, what did you think about that?
Well, I was really intrigued, right? Because we didn't know exactly 100% who this other variant of Loki was. But what I did know is that this Loki was very intelligent. It threw the TVA off, and it was set on a revenge thing just to destroy the TVA and alter the timelines intentionally. Intrigued me, man. Like, I was like, why is this Loki doing this? What is the purpose of this? Do they want to get back to their timeline? Do they want to destroy multiple timelines? What is the whole purpose? And then as we get into what is it, what, like a supermarket, and it was a mix of a hardware store, whatever it really was, it was very interesting because she had the power to just touch someone and control them for a few moments in time. And that really kind of tricked the TVA because she took control of some of the TVA's guards, and she took control of random people. Loki kind of saw this and was like, whoa, this is great. I gotta go follow this Loki and figure out, what their plan is. As he gets in the back with her, he sees like all these different things, and I guess like the timeline bombs that she has or she has collected or something. And he sees everything on camera, and he's like, well, we got to work together. We both have the same idea to stop the TVA. And I just thought that was really cool how they escaped together. And it just like, I mean, you could tell at this point that it was set up, in fact, for the Loki that we know to fall for this female Loki, Sylvie. You could kind of see the setup there because he admired her intelligence and her courage, and no matter like how many times a Loki fails at what they're trying to do, she was persistent until he gets everything right, and he admired that and he was like along for the ride, and then they kind of escape together, and they end up trapped on a planet that's about to be destroyed. I thought that was really cool. Like, I don't know, it's just something there, and you kind of saw at that time when they were trapped on that planet, you kind of saw a little bit of humanity in Loki. He kind of got drunk singing Asgard songs. He stops the big building from falling. And he really feels bad for the people on that planet. Like, it's almost like there's a point where they're kind of like standing in line, right? And he's like, do they all know that they're not going to make it? Like, he's, it just, there was some humanity in him there for a second where he wasn't as this bad guy that we all seem. And instead, we kind of learn that he only does what he has to do just to survive for himself. And it's not like he's out, hell-bent on destroying the world or reality as we know it. It's that he wants to kind of rule stuff, but he also wants to survive and not necessarily hurt the whole planet. He just wants to, get his own power, get his own right, rule a throne somewhere, can control a planet, control a world, whatever it is. But he doesn't want to destroy things, unless he has to.
I just got a question there, Glenn.
Yeah.
I think at least in episode 2, he still was that Loki fresh off of that butt whooping he took from the Avengers. So I think he's still kind of an evil dude, but this other variant impressed him a lot, right? I also think that what you mentioned there, you said throne. That's a very specific word because in my mind, that Loki just wants to feel recognized. He want people to appreciate him for him because all his life he's been in the shadow of Thor.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
So he's still manipulative, still narcissistic, he's still who he is. But like you said, I won't say he's complete. I agree that he's not completely evil, but he is evil in a sense because he still will sacrifice people for his own ambitions. He still would use people as pawns for his own ambitions. He still would kill a lot of people to get what he wants because he feels he deserves it. He feels entitled to it. And I point out one other thing. In that marketplace, I found it was kind of scary. When she was sitting there having a conversation, right? And it felt odd. I didn't know what was happening at first. I didn't realize that she was able to manipulate the thoughts. And so, she started saying specific words and ask specific questions and whatnot. And that's that transition. And I think that is unique because it still shows that she has the same type of ambition that what Loki likes in her or whatnot. But it also says that she is also more assertive than he is. You said he's a survivor. She's more than that. She will sacrifice anything just to meet the ends, which is a little different than his ambitions.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, so as we're in episode 3, she was when they were sitting down and talking, right? They had that conversation about magic and his mom and prior relationships, and she was like really down and not knowing her mom, and then Loki started talking about his mom and showing that his magic, and she was actually impressed with that, and you could tell. So sort of back to what Carlo was saying about the humanity of Loki, as he was going out and getting drunk. And then he asked Sylvie about the magic that you were just describing. She taught herself it, she was like, I taught myself,
Right.
And Loki was super surprised about that. I think Loki, the version of Loki that we're looking at here, doesn't know the span of his powers, really. He probably, once he figures it out, it's going to be pretty big, and we'll see what happens. Sort of like, does he make his way back to the normal timeline, or does he just stay within the TVA and actually takes over? But we'll get to that later. But yeah, it was a good conversation, and you could tell sort of the relationship starting to build there as they were getting a little bit closer and understanding one another, but they still don't trust each other. And that was evident throughout the entire series. But one thing that was happening in that episode is, like, as they were not going to make it because the train derailed, and Carlo, when you mentioned to Loki showing his powers and stopping that building from falling, it was crazy because it was just happened, and he just stopped, and it was just like, whoa, where did that come from? I don't think we've ever seen Loki do anything like that before, so it was, he's always usually the trickster, jokester, or bad dude beating up people and stuff like that, but for him to do that and rescue people brings back to the humanity part where you could start seeing him change. Yeah, so as they figure out that the temp pad can't get recharged, they have no way to get off the planet because the ship crashed. The TVA comes and rescues them and / captures them, so they're back, right? So as they're back, Mobius is not happy, the TVA is not happy, they split them up. They start talking to him, and Sylvie is trying to play Loki tricks on Ravonna Rainslayer. She's trying to play those tricks. After all that stuff that's going on, Dion, how did you feel when towards the end of the episode, Mobius getting pruned? Like, that was a shocker to me. I was like, whoa. Yeah. So first he was defending him, and then he was, like, he wanted to capture him, and then he was just like all over the place. I guess how do you lead up to the pruning, going through that episode there?
Yeah, so I think it was shocking because this character was introduced to us. And I mean, the actor that plays as him is not, he's a pretty famous actor, and it's more or less the interpretation is this is going to be a key character moving this narrative forward. So seeing that happen is kind of take that safety net off of under you. Like anything can happen now because the guy that seemed like a buddy partner of Loki, even though they're going back and forth, is now swept out of the picture. So, and then you trying to understand what is really pruning. What is a normal timeline? Is anything a normal timeline, or is this just the timeline that we understand or what we know? Could there be multiple timelines? Could there be a different universe timeline? In other words, I it's a lot of questions. And what is really pruned? What does that really mean? It's at least the way the show is. It's basically telling the audience that you don't exist. But is that what is really happening here? I don't know, but I do know it was disheartening because you're just now getting attached to this character and then just sweep it away and everything. And then you see our main guy in the next episode suffers the same fate. The guy that the freaking show is named after, and you're like, hold on, something ain't right here. We need to rewind and go back to understand what this prune really is. Like, you get what I mean? Like, something, you take two of the main people off of the chessboard out of nowhere, just like a snap in so many words. So again, I feel like it was like taking that safety net off of underneath of your feet to let you know that anything could happen. However, we there's other episodes to go on, so it's got to be more to it, right? So definitely it was it kind of felt scary,
right?
In a sense, right?
Right. Yeah. One thing I wanted to bring up before we move on to the next subject here is that Mobius put Loki in that time loop with Lady Sif.
Right.
And we haven't seen Lady Sif forever, so it was surprising to see her.
Yes.
And
he was taking a beating for a minute. He was taking it. He just kept getting it. And he even tried to what he tried to do. He tried to tell her, like, look, I'm sorry. You're right. I am all these things. And she still gave it to him. You know what I mean? He had to take that L like numerous times. He was out of breath, and he wouldn't even want to get doing the swinging. He was just that was messed up.
Right. And they found out that the TVA are robots, so all that stuff is tied into Loki getting pruned. And Carlo, as Loki gets pruned, he shows up on this planet. And then when he wakes up and he sees all these people, what were your thoughts?
I was very interested because this is where you finally get to see the different variants and where they end up, I guess, either when they're pruned or that one kid claimed that was his world and he had killed his brother Thor. So it was really interesting just to see how many different Lokis there were. And this is only a small factor of the possibility of Loki. So I couldn't even imagine how many more there were, especially because, and this cracks me up, but yes, Marvel created an alligator Loki. And I love that alligator Loki. So Marvel, Disney, Ryan, if you're watching this, can we get an alligator Loki toy figure? Because I want one. I just want one. I think that was so cool. Each one of the Lokis had their own personalities. So that just made it so much more unique, and they had their own abilities. You saw like a Loki fighter, which was this big guy. He was tall and he looked muscular, and he kind of wore clothes of a warrior, and he had like a hammer with him. And then you saw like a little kid with a crown that was drinking when they were all saluting, he was drinking a little high C thing with a straw sitting on his throne. So it just, and the alligator, he only said one thing, and it was like growl. Like every time he disagreed with someone, even he just like to jump, bite people's hands. So,
Did he chew
I
off
mean,
President Loki's hand?
yeah. And that's another thing that is a good point here, is that when we see these variants and they go underground, there is a sabotage surprise by the warrior Loki, who brings in the president Loki, who is known in the comic book universe for a 4-part miniseries, which is really interesting that they brought him into the series, and he had a whole bunch of other Lokis that were working with him, and then they all turned against them anyway. And it was like no Loki could trust another Loki,
Right.
except the old Loki, the alligator Loki, the kid Loki, and the Loki that we know. It's like they all ended up together, and they all seemed to trust each other enough to an extent. And I think they were just tired of all this infighting, and they just wanted to get the heck out of there wherever they were and figure out how to clear this void. So, man, I loved it. That was episode 5 is my favorite episode. It was just so damn cool, and that is where we also see Mobius come into action to save Sylvie, which was very shocking. I didn't think Mobius would be there. And then at the very end, the initial Loki in the old clothes sacrificed himself by creating this fake looking Asgard to let the others escape. And that leads us into episode 6. And PK, on episode 6, what did you think about it and the introduction of how it started out?
Oh, when they showed King the Conqueror, let me tell you something, okay? I freaked out because this is he's kind of like a reoccurring villain fighting Avengers. But what's really cool is, at least in the comic, and this is why I think this is, in my opinion, episode 6 is probably the best, is because it brings home all these elements, right? All these elements of loyalty, trust, free will, all these things, and Loki himself, like his personality, his different variant personalities, all this stuff. And Kang also is Kang the Conqueror, like from the comics. Even though I don't think they said he's always tied to Doctor Doom and could be a descendant of him, right? Because he comes from the future. He is an intelligent being, like a scholar. So this version is a scholar. It's almost like he's the smarter one out of all the variants, who maybe figured all this stuff out. I don't know. He probably knows about all these variants and all these universes, and this could be that Kang. But when he said something like, if you think I'm bad, if you think I'm evil, you should see my variants, I think that's foreshadowing. Kang the Conqueror, and it could be different ones, because there were different ones, right?
I was going to say, yeah, as he was talking, he was when they were sitting in the chair, as he was talking, he was going through the sacred timeline and explaining everything. So that touches on your subject of how it brought everything home, right? Because
right. And he had that conversation with both Lokis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they realize, and at this time, Loki himself, he has fallen over heels for his variant. And even though he stated he is narcissistic, this proves that he loves himself more than anything else. Mm-hmm. But he was willing to give up all his ambitions for the variant. However, this is where that trust, free will, and loyalty come in. All these elements we've been building up to, and we here with this situation, and Kang is playing on it. He's basically saying, this is what it is. He's willing to give up all this power, but it has to be one. It has to be the person, or you know, a situation is going to happen.
Right.
And
I think he knew. I think he sat there and watched him because he was like, you know what? I'm gonna give it to both of you.
right,
But he knew that they can't trust each other because Loki can't trust another Loki, and it ended up playing out that way.
and I think he also knew what was going to happen.
Mhm.
Like I think he knew beyond the understanding of what was happening before it happened. Like he was just tired. That's why I think what happened at the end happened, because I think he was just done. He didn't want to do it anymore. But I also think he knows what's coming down the line.
Mhm.
Let me give you
He said
guys one thing.
reincarnation. He said
Well,
reincarnation.
well, check this out. Let me give you something he in the comics. He appeared back in the Fantastic Four comic back in the day, but you guys know the Sphinx over there in Egypt. Nobody really has history on how this happened really. Well, Marvel took that idea of Kang coming to the past to that timeline in a spaceship that looks like the Sphinx.
Hmm.
And even though some stuff happened, he got in a fight with Fantastic Four, got booted out of the timeline. He left that Sphinx there to out his understanding is to make humanity wonder about this of all time, just to give him a stamp. All I'm saying is that was one version. Then we got another version. So all I'm saying is that I think this is foreshadowing this type of situation where we're expanding the idea of everything that we've been watching, as far as the Marvel Cinematic Universe up to this point, is it. No, that means now we're sitting at a situation where all of these variants or possibilities of storylines can now uh, convey on each other. So we'll see this. I think I'm almost, I don't have a guarantee, but I'm pretty sure we're going to see this King the Conqueror, right? Come from the future to the past and do these things. The reason why I'm talking about him, because I think he's the strongest character in this storyline, because all the power he held when it came to the timeline, right? And with that being said, the influence of a Loki to wield that power is too powerful for one Loki to be okay to share. Let's be honest. That's why they can't trust each other, because they know better. If a Loki could get absolute power, he will sacrifice, like we said, we talked about earlier, he will sacrifice anybody to meet those ambitions, not just the one we know, but other ones too, right? Other variants, just like other variants of King and Conqueror are probably more ambitious than the one we've seen here. However, the one we've seen here, I believe, is probably the smart one that figured this whole thing out, seen it play out, and he was just tired.
And he even said it. He said, I pit all the other kings against each other, figured it all out, won it, and then kept the sacred timeline, and then created the TVA to police it. So
right. So
we didn't have any issues. He was like, everything that happened in Endgame and Infinity War was supposed to happen because I made it happen. Right.
And that plays on what I was saying, like manipulating the timeline, like just kind of facilitating what they wanted to happen, if you get what I mean. So is it really a variant at that point? Or is it they're the variants? Well, I guess we all variants at the end of the day, but you get what I mean. It seems to me that they were funneling the timeline the way they wanted it to go. But now the door is open. Now we are a situation where, yeah, I thought it was cool. We got a cartoon clock that's talking to us that, you know what I mean? Clowns, Carlo, he may not see or understand what this cartoon clock, but it's pretty cool. At the end of the day, the multiverse is a thing. I felt like this episode set the groundwork for, because all the other TV series, this one, even though this one takes place before, or started before rather. This one set the heaviest groundwork of all the multi possibilities to come. And again, I dropped that hint that I don't know for sure, but it's hinted that Kang is a descendant of Doctor Doom. And if that's true, then if that is real and it's going to be real, if it is real in MCU, then we will see Fantastic Four and all this other stuff come to pass too, and then Kang the Conqueror and more Avenger fights, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm excited. I think this is dope. All this storyline, all this stuff we're talking about, and the fact that Mobius is also a strong character, being there, new, but his trust was broken because he believed in this TBA, and he started to see that they manipulated his life. They manipulated everything, people's minds, everything. I remember he had a partner, and I forgot we didn't touch on it, but she couldn't speak anymore. She couldn't speak, and he didn't know what happened, and they wouldn't tell him what happened, and he couldn't go talk to her, and it was like, why is this such a mystery? Why is this such a thing? And you start to realize that the TVA is more than what they say, and most organizations is. I mean, if the MCU didn't prove it to us, I mean, Shield is not what they say they are, and it's like an ongoing theme, right? It's like a lot of these organizations that seem like they're good, just they're organizations. They have no good intentions. It's what matters to them. So I think this is great. Anyways, guys, when it comes to the end of the episode 6, I just want to know, like, what do you think about the multiverse, and how would this interconnect to the MCU going forward? Because in my mind, this is probably the best of the TV series that set that groundwork.
Yeah. So as we start into the multiverse, Carlo, how, I'm going to kind of dump it back on you a little bit, because you do have some scenarios and some ideas and things like that. As we come up with the next round of MCU movies coming out, you got Ant-Man, Quantumania, but before that we have Spider-Man. Nobody knows what's going on in Spider-Man. That's going to be out, and then you have Ant-Man, Quantumania, and then you have Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. We still got to finish sort of some of that WandaVision stuff, and then address all this stuff, because he is the keeper of the sacred timeline. And then you have at the end of all this, Fantastic Four. So how do you feel about all this new stuff that's coming, and based off how this show sort of set the groundwork for the multiverse?
Man, I am excited for this, Paris. I live for the multiverse divergence. If you go back to the Black Widow episode that we did, I put timestamps in there, and you can see some of my timeline divergence conspiracy theories. And this Loki episode kind of leads me to more timeline divergence theories. And I am going to stick with the fact that Spider-Man 3 is going to be a multiverse of Spider-Man. I do believe that this opens up the King in Black series, which has been mentioned several times now by Marvel creators as something relevant, that this is going to be where Peter Parker does not give up his Venom suit after Secret War, and he is going to flip into the multiverse, and we are going to be introduced to the Symbiote King somewhere in the movies briefly, or somewhere in a TV series. And it's very possible that with Kang the Conqueror is that he wants to create this madness, all these divergence and timeline issues. And then we're probably going to see a Kang that wants to bring it in and kind of save the timeline, which is like what King in Black was, where he came back and kind of wanted to save the timeline with the Guardian. The Guardian was watching everything. Read that series if you haven't read it, because I swear Marvel is headed this way. And the very interesting thing about this to me is that not only did Peter Parker keep the Venom suit, right? And I think that's going to be mentioned in Spider-Man 3 with the multiverse, but we're gonna see that these symbiotes, these what they call shadow creatures as well, don't necessarily always attach on to a living object, but they can take the shape and form of living objects as well. So they could be imposters for a little bit. And I think that maybe we're going to be introduced to imposter characters or variant imposter characters that are going to try to create new scenarios in this universe, which would be really cool for Marvel to do that because it creates a wide hole of conspiracy theories and fun topics and rumors and fans getting crazy over their next favorite thing. Oh man, Paris, I just think that this is what's gonna happen. Is it's gonna just blow up from here, and then, I mean, I think we're gonna see Red Skull variants. I think we're gonna see variants of Doctor Doom. We already seen in the comic books and in the Loki series of kind of like a variant of Kang the Conqueror as well. And who are these guardians that watch over the timeline? I know that in the show they were kind of like robots, but in the comic book King of Black, it was like a really omnipresent being or beings that watched over different timelines to make sure that they didn't collide or divulge. And I think this is where it's going to get really interesting. And further to my point after this, right, is now where does Guardians of the Galaxy come in? I think they're going to play a part in this in the future as well, Paris. I honestly believe that they're going to have something to do with the future of this because Star-Lord's father was kind of like a god as well,
Celestial being, yeah.
a celestial being. So everything just kind of ties in. And then we're going to get back to Thanos and the Infinity Stones and the Infinity War. And could all these Infinity Stones that PK talked about that were like paperweights and paper collections, could they have somehow prevented Infinity Wars in different timelines? I mean, another thing too to think about is that in episode 6, we saw helicopters on the ground with the name Thanos, right? So what does that mean on top of everything else? Was Thanos a leader? Was Thanos a good person in one of the timelines? Was he a good being that kind of helped the world and try to stop corruption with the Infinity Stones? We don't know until Marvel gets more into this. But, and then, okay, I'm sorry for getting a little bit off here, but again, another timeline divulgence. Could this kind of go back to if you think about the X-Men cartoon series, which is on Disney Plus now, the original Fox series, they had Jubilee, they had Sabretooth, they had a very interesting setup for Weapon X, and they had the Sentinels, right? The Sentinels. So could the Sentinels be part of a divergent timeline with a Thanos in a divergent timeline and Omega Red a divergent in a timeline? All of this could come into play now. They could bring in all these characters that they have out there that are so powerful and so unique and so underused, especially Juggernaut. Come on, Marvel, give us a Juggernaut, man. Give us a good Juggernaut. And Deadpool, I know they're trying to bring Deadpool into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but in Deadpool, Juggernaut didn't wear his normal suit either, if you remember that. And those X-Men were kind of like a parody of X-Men, just making it fun. So could all that come into a multiverse plane? I don't know, Paris, take it away. What do you think?
Yeah, I was excited at the end of Loki. I was like, oh my gosh, where is this going to go? Because we already knew that all these movies were going to be out, but we didn't know the sort of the direction, right? We just knew that they were coming. And now it's like, oh, Loki just dropped the bomb, right? Just imagine if you're Doctor Strange, right? You got to go fix the stuff that happened in WandaVision. She's some Scarlet Witch, and she's got all these powers and messing around in the dark realms with Agatha Harkness and all this other stuff, and that sort of multiverse of, she hurt her kids. Now she's probably tooling around with the dark magic. I forgot what the term was called, but she has the special magic, so overpowering magic that she has. Now she can, she has the book. So Doctor Strange has to figure that out. Now he has to figure out the stuff that's happening in Loki. He's going to be in Spider-Man, so there's got to be a reason why he's in Spider-Man. So it's like, what is what? And he's the person that's in charge of the managing all this. So he's got to be shaking his head right now, like, holy crap, right? So we'll see sort of how all this shakes out. We have Eternals that's coming. Eternals, they were always the beings that never got involved. They didn't get involved in Endgame or Infinity War and all this other stuff, the snap. They didn't do any of that stuff, but now they're awake, right? Now they're getting involved. So whatever's happening now, because of this Loki series and what Kang explained, brought them, I think, is going to bring them out of the background and have them sort of jump into all this. Now, I don't know if we're going to have like a major team up. If there is, I don't know which movie it would be in, because the way that the schedules are out for the movies, Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness comes, and I'm sure that's going to be big. Like, that's going to, maybe it may be on the Avengers level, because how they're building all this up, they're going to have a couple of ruthless Kangs running around.
I think you're right. Stuff. I think you're right, but there's one movie you forget to mention, and that's Shang-Chi. Mm-hmm. And that comes first. And we don't, for us, the trailers, there is some things there in particularly not showing us. And the city of Kung Fu is a mystic place in itself, that exists outside of normal dimension or continuity. So we don't know what that's going to be like. So that could also be a part of this, and also kind of be a gateway into something else. We don't know, but I'm just throwing it out there. Like, we got to keep that in mind as well. And I believe that the TV shows are lined up in such a way so that when the movies drop, it is the groundwork that Black Widow and Loki already set, because both of those took place prior to the snap, but still had some sort of after, some of the groundwork for newer characters, new threats, new things that are happening going forward, that I think we're going to start seeing that crop up in the new movies that are dropping going forward. I think that's a reason why, Black Widow released in the time that it did. Far as now, I understand it took place before, but there were some after effects. There's some things that happened even after the snap, just like Loki. And again, we still don't understand how this timeline even means. What does it even mean? To me, I think it's all relevant. So it exists all at the same time, and they could just go into those timelines or multiverses, and just have existing different iterations of what does that look like, right? I don't know. I'm just speculating, right? So to me, I don't know if it's past, future, or present. More or less, like, they could just reach into like a water and just pick what part they want to hop onto. I don't know how to explain it, but this is how I view it. It's kind of like it's all the same to them.
Yeah, regardless of what sort of happens, to be a Marvel fan right now it's pretty epic. So this is what we all dreamed of, right? Growing up, once we got movies started, it's like, Marvel Studios got, after it got bought by Disney, they kicked out and they started doing this stuff and tying all these storylines together. And so far, other industries are starting to really pay attention to it, because keep the stories going, have people continue to talk about it and stuff like that. So it's been pretty cool to see this happen. I'm very excited for the future.
Right. With that being said, what do you guys give Loki's season? Like, what is your verdict of the season itself?
I'll go first and then kick it to Carlo. For me, I give it 5 out of 5 stars. I think the first 3 TV shows that they've done, I've given 5 out of 5 stars. WandaVision, Falcon Winter Soldier, and this one also. So, yeah, they're not missing a beat from me. This is epic. How about yourself, Carlo?
I think on this one I'd give it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I feel like that when we are introduced to the variants, and I know their shows are time limited, right? But I wish we could have got more stories behind some of the variants. I really am interested in Alligator Loki, and I hope that like they tell us more about Alligator Loki. Like I think Alligator Loki's great.
Hey, look, for me, I give it a 4 out of 5. Um, and as much as I like Falcon Winter Soldier, I feel like this one, specifically episode 6, uh, gave us more to look forward to.
Mhm.
And I appreciate the actors, their chemistry on film together. It was excellent. It felt natural. It
Right.
felt really like, there's a connection. And I'm not just talking about Loki himself, but talking about Mobius. I'm talking about just in general, the chemistry of these actors. They did a great job on delivering and making us believe in something we just never seen before. Like I said, this is like this is an original story, original plot to push forward a new era uh, in the Marvel's MCU, right? Um, I also feel like, with that being said, it gives us more to look forward to in season 2. And I get what you're saying, Carlo. I understand you want to get into uh, Alligator Loki, and it was an interesting character, but all these shows are done with high budgets, and you're not the special effects, everything are top notch. The stuff is expensive, so they gotta condense it because you know what I mean. It's
Right.
not it's not and don't get me wrong, we enjoy them all for sure, but I always said that quality over quantity. So 6 episodes gave us the highest quality possible. I would rather have high quality and be excited for what's coming next than to have 25 and it just kind of going, spinning wheels. So,
Yeah.
kudos to them. They put in their work. They put in a lot of effort. They got the right people in place, and they're doing their thing. I think it's a great segue into the next uh, the next story. What
Yeah.
is the next story, by the way? Is it Shang-Chi? I think it's
Shang
in September.
Shang-Chi is the next Marvel Studios Well, actually, What If is coming.
Oh, what
They're
if?
talking
That's right.
about What If is coming. We will be doing episode by episode reviews, so stay tuned on that. And what after that is Shang-Chi is the next motion picture release. One thing, Carlo, that I totally understand how Alligator Loki was, and it was awesome because they did do Frog Thor, right? So Frog Thor was in the show too. Just little trinkets and Easter eggs all through this TV series was great. One thing I did want to bring before we get out of here is that uh, old Loki. So there was this theory going around, and it blew up on our Facebook page also. And what happened was everybody thought Loki survived Thanos choking him, right, by creating a shell of himself and then him escaping in the background. Now, the old Loki sort of put that theory to rest because the old Loki told that story. He was like, "Yeah, when I was getting choked by Thanos, I I pretended to be him, and I left, and then went far away for years and years and years." So he actually was on a different timeline for a long time, and then they finally caught him. Right, something happened, and then he got caught. So he had been and diverged from the timeline from a long time ago, but he kind of put that theory to rest because the theory was that our current Loki did that and survived, but now we know that it was actually the old Loki who actually did that. I'm glad they listened to the fan theories because they tie that into this episode so brilliantly, into the TV show. So I'm super excited as I'm sure everyone else is. So yeah. So Carlo, what do you think? Close us out. Let's close this out.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with you 100%. And I hope, Marvel, if you're listening to this, you could create Alligator Loki in a hot tub and it would do well. I'm just telling you. Just telling you. No, but Paris, don't we have a special guest coming up before we get out of
Yes,
here?
we do. HC. Uh, Man, sorry. Cut.
Cut.
Hochi. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna get it right here. Hey Carlo, yeah, we do. We got Hochi. He actually is doing the story for the new Luke Cage comic that's going to be coming out.
Oh man.
He's also he's also the author of the comic Martin Luther King Jr. Biop. That's on Amazon. That's done well over the years. He's also penned and written all sorts of stories throughout the history. So we got a show with him coming up. That's going to be awesome. I cannot wait until we get to talk to him. So yeah, that's all we have for right now, and I'm sure we have others coming up and lined up. So stay tuned.
Awesome.
All right.
Yeah.
That's
So
awesome, guys.
everybody out there, please post your comments below, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, or wherever else you see this. Post your comments below. Let us know if you like our theories, if you disagree with our theories, or if you got other theories out there, because this is where it gets fun to be a fan of comic books and movies. And we appreciate you all for listening. So catch the next episode, which is going to be about What If. And we're also going to go back through other series like WandaVision and more as well. So thank you very much for watching. I hope everyone had a great time listening to us and enjoyed it. And see you guys next time.
Embrace your inner variant.